Talked about a 5-chapter book, a chiastic structure, A, B, C, B, A. We're now in the 4th chapter, which in many ways parallels the 2nd chapter of the book of Eichah. It's again in the Aleph Bet, and we begin. Eichah yu'am zahav, yishne haketem atov, tishtapechna avnei kodesh barosh kol chutzot. Alas, or oi, or woe, the gold is dulled. Debase the finest gold. The sacred gems are spilled at every street corner. This is right, something that was so great, coming back to the 1st chapter in some ways, otherwise the 2nd one, right? The idea of the city that was full, that's now empty. The city that was full of pilgrims is now empty. B'nai Tzion hayikarim, the precious children of Zion, once valued as gold, alas, they are accounted as earthen pots, work of potter's hands. Right? We once thought they were gold, but they're pottery. They can be easily destroyed. We have the reversal of glory. That's that's the depth of the tragedy. It's one thing if you were never a wealthy guy and now you have nothing, but when you were a billionaire or something, you had all the money in the world and now you have nothing. It's much, much harsher. When you had a beautiful family and now you don't anymore, it's much, much harsher than somebody who never had that. And so this reversal is showing to an extent how the exalted has completely disappeared and the difficulty of that in. Gam tanim chaltzu shad, heiniku gurehen batamila achzar, even jackals offer their breast and suckle their young, right? Even things that are completely wild and destructive like jackals, but my poor people have turned cruel like ostriches in the desert. They're unable to care for each other, right? With this complete destruction and hunger, it's self-preservation that's at the core of who and what you are, and therefore they're not there to help others, even like the jackals. Continue in verse 4 with, of course, the Dalid. Davak lishon yonek el chiko batsama olalim sha'alu lechem. Horace ein lehen. The tongue of the suckling cleaves to its palate for thirst. Right? There's no liquid. There's nothing in. The mouth is so dry that the palate is stuck to the tongue. Little children beg for bread. None gives them a morsel. Back in the 2nd chapter, talked about the wealthy, the Kohanim and the Nevi'im, and they're looking for bread. And here it is even worse. It is the children that are asking for bread. Ha'ochlim lama'adanim nashamu bachutzot. Ha'emunim alei tola chibku ashbatot. Those who feasted on dainties, a little fancier the food, the less food there is on the plate. Right, those who feasted on dainties lie famished in the streets. Those who were reared in purple have embraced refuse of heap. The word here, the purple, one of the colors of royalty, the colors that we have for the Kohen, for the king, purples and blues, etc., etc. And now they're in the ashpa, they're in the garbage like an animal, like a rodent. The guilt of my people exceeded the iniquity of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment without a hand striking it. And here we see, it's a lot of interesting things that come up here. Comparing to Sodom. This is not the only. We have Yeshivas compares the Jewish people to Sodom in the opening of his book for their immoral behavior. But here is this interesting question. And it seems to me that Sodom, it's better. Sodom is just wiped away. It's destroyed in a second. And here we have the suffering. We have the survivors who suffer and continue with that suffering. Now, back in the 3rd chapter, things seemed better because we had this hope in God. Shifchi kamayim libeich, right? We had this person who, whether it was Yirmiyahu or the expression of somebody in Jerusalem who was crying out to God, who remembered God, kilo tamnu rachamav, that God's mercy never stops, and even in destruction there is some hope, and I will lift up my hands to the heavens towards God. But here it's almost like it's worse. The suffering continues and continues. Think back to the book of Eov. Now Eov transcends that, but at first, when he's left with his suffering, he wants to die. He asks God, just take me as well, enough with it. And then afterwards, no, all he wants is an audience with God. But here that aspect, which is worse? Continuing in verse 7, Zaku nizireha misheleg tzachu mechalav admu etzem mipninim sapir gizratam. Her elect was purer than snow, whiter than milk. Their limbs were ruddier than coral. Their bodies were like sapphire, right? So the beauty, and again, the all the mention of the gold and the precious jewels. And here the Nazireha, my English says the elect, but is also reference to a Nazir, somebody who's trying to be purified. And that's what they were. They were purer than snow. They were so innocent. They just wanted to come close to God. But what happens is they go from the white imagery of that to verse 8, Chashach mishchor ta'aram lo nikru bachutzot tzapad oram al atzmam yavesh haya ka'etz. Now their faces are blacker than soot. They're dirty. They're soiled. They're not recognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones because they are so hungry. It has become dry as wood. Tovim hayu chalei cherev mechalei ra'av. Shehem yazuvu Medukarim tnuvot sadai. Better off were the slain of the sword than those slain by famine, who pined away as though wounded for lack of the fruits of the fields. I have a letter like this, I believe, that was sent by my great-great-grandparents to my great-grandparents. My great-grandparents had left Germany, and my great-great-parents were there still. My great-grandparents were already in America, living either in Albany, or by then they had enough of Albany, or New York, and they sent a letter that said, the living are jealous of the dead. Better off were those who were slain by the sword than those slain by the famine. Coming back to the question we had before. And how do we know this? Because look at what they had to go to in verse 10. Yedei nashim rachmaniot bishlu yaldehen hayu levarot lamo b'shever bat ami. With their own hands, women cooked their children. Such became their fare in the disaster of my poor people. And of course, this is talking about the actual women. At the time, we have this also back in the book of Melachim, and we think about it. You can also read it as you could say, oh, it's not literal. It's talking about God. God is supposed to be Rachamim. God is supposed to be somebody who is noted for mercy and compassion. In a sense, is boiling his own children with these disasters, with these horrors that has happened to his city, the city of Jerusalem. If you want to read it the second way, the next verse, this verse 11, makes sense. The Lord vented all his fury, poured out his blazing wrath. He kindled a fire in Sion, which consumed its foundations. And again, similar to chapter 2, about God's rage in that verse. And this, if you take this in this chiastic structure again, continuing pasuk Yud Bet, lo aminu malchei Eretz kol yoshvei tevel ki avot sarvo ayev b'sharei Yerushalayim. No king could believe it. The inhabitants of the world couldn't understand it. How could a foe, how could an enemy enter the gates of Jerusalem? Mechatot neviah avonot kohaneh shovchim b'kirba dam tzadikim. Why was it? Because the sin of her prophets, and this is not referring to Yeshaya or Yirmiyah or Amos or Nahum, it's referring to the false prophets, the one who said that everything was fine over and over again. The iniquities of her priests who had shed in her midst blood, the blood of the righteous is what they had done. So that right, we have the complete reversal. The Kohanim were supposed to bring life. Yes, there's death to animals, but it's going to God and extending the life in the Beit HaMikdash, where you can have no death of humans. And what are they becoming? They're becoming the spillers of blood. So it's no surprise that that place of sanctity is now a place of nothingness. Na'u ivrim bachutzot. They wandered blindly through the streets defiled with blood, so that no one was able to touch their garments. Right? They would stagger. They were unable. But people were just suffering from all of the horrors. Suru tamei. Karu lamo. Suru al tigu kinatsu gamna'u. What happened? People shouted them, "Go away, you unclean thing! Go away! Don't touch me!" And they wandered again and again, for the nations had said, "They shall not stay here no longer." So is that something that's said about the Jewish people at the time of the exile, at the time of the destruction, or is it almost prophetic for the future, the way that our people were treated in all different places, as if we were dirty, as if we drank their blood in certain cases, right? Right before Pesach, we think of blood libels related to Korban Pesach, the accusations of Jews about needing the blood for our matzah. Look at us that way. Pnei Adonai chilkam lo yosif lahabitam, verse 16, pasuk tet zayin. Pnei choanim lo nasu uzkenim lo chananu. The Lord's face has turned away from them. He will look on them no more. They showed no regard for priests, no favor to the elders. So it wasn't only, we started with the descriptions of the problems were with the leaders and the leadership, the Kohanim, but also the regular people did not look at them and did not respect them. Now, maybe you're saying they don't deserve this respect if they're being terrible, but maybe this is while they were still, they were not yet corrupt, when they were still decent leadership of Kohanim, or even every once in a while, there's a Yirmiyahu, there's a Yeshaya, there's a Kohen who is still uncorrupted. Odenu tichalena einenu el ezratenu havel. Now our eyes pine away in vain for deliverance, right? We still have this little hope, but we know it's in vain. It's hevel, it's fleeting. Maybe we see something, we say, oh, that's a sign from God that something good is going to happen. It's hevel, it's fleeting, it's momentary, it disappears completely, right? We wait, we're yearning, we're waiting for a nation. Cannot help. Nobody's coming to our rescue. Nobody's coming to our help. We think maybe Egypt will help us against the Babylonians. Maybe one of these other nations that is allied against this world power. Nobody's coming to help us. Sadut adenu milechet berchovotenu karav kitzenu malu yamenu kiva kitzenu. Our steps were checked. We could not walk in our squares. Our doom is near. Our days are done. Alas, our doom has come. Right? We see the expectation. We're worried about where we can go. Then we can't go into the square, into the public square. And then we hear the rumors, our doom is coming, our days are gone. And then it has come. You think about sort of a Nazi Germany type of image there in terms of the way people had to act in the ghettos and what they're hearing and where they have to go. And finally, the day of destruction or the day of transport arrives. Kalim hayurotfenu minisharei shamayim al heharim de lakunu bamidbar arvulanu. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles in the sky. They chased us in the mountains, lay in wait for us in the wilderness. I think, of course, think about the Kanfei Nisharim of God taking the Jewish people out of exile. We think of, the book of Shir Hashirim with so many expressions of animals and nature. And here it is the reversal. The nature is not about the love and the way that God sees the Jewish people and the Jewish people see God, but rather the destroyers are as swift as the eagles. Ruach Apenu, Mashiach Adonai Nilkad, Bishchi Totam. Asher Amarnu Bitzlu Nichye Vagayim, the breath of our life, the Lord's anointed, right? Us was captured in their traps. Those they were hiding to live amongst the nation, those they were in shade. We had thought, right? We thought we could escape them, but we're not. We were God's anointed. And even this refers to, you could say, the Mashiach Hashem. Mashiach means, of course, the king. David is the Mashiach. David is the one who is anointed. And so commentaries, Rashi and others say this refers specifically to Yoshiyahu, who Yirmiyahu laments the death of the last great king of Yehuda from the Davidic dynasty, Yoshiyahu, who was killed in battle against the Egyptians. Si v'simchi bat Edom yoshevet be'eretz Utz, gam alayich ta'avor kos, tishkari v'titari. Rejoice, be joyful, fair Edom, who dwell in the land of Uz. To you the cup shall pass. You shall get drunk and expose your nakedness, right? You are laughing, you are joyous. We talked about in this past, right? In the chapter of Al Naharot Bavel, it talks about the Edomites screaming joyously, destroy Jerusalem, strip it down to its foundations. And we ask in that chapter for God to take vengeance against Edom. And here too, this mention, and of course, talked about yesterday, that part of the Pesach Seder, we talk about the Shvo Chamatcha al Hagoyim is taken from, or El Hagoyim is taken from Yirmiyahu, and then a verse yesterday from the third chapter of the book of Eichah. And here too, this idea of the kos, which also comes up in other places. You will drink from it as well. And the chapter ends, Tam avonech bat Zion lo yosif lahaglotech pakad avonech bat Edom gila al chatotaich. Your iniquity, fair Zion, is expiated. He will exile you no longer. Your iniquity, fair Edom, he will note. He will uncover your sins, right? Our horrors have happened. The famine, the degradation, the failure of leadership. The Nazir was so pure has been blackened. And at the end of the chapter, even after all that horror, what do we say? There's a little glimmer of hope. It is so bad it can't get worse. It's so bad. And Edom, who represents sort of Israel's enemies, even if they were not the ones who caused the major parts of the destruction, and they were just ones who cheered it on, and perhaps were some of the willing executioners, we have this hope and this belief that our time will come when we will no longer be the one being punished, but that God's anger will be vented upon the enemies of Israel, those who have been so happy to destroy us, and those delighting in our destruction by others. So there is a little dint of hope at the end of this chapter. Tomorrow we will conclude the book of Eichah.